Hi, I'm Corey, and I'm here today with Kristen Pratt of Master Books. Kristen, thank you for joining me and taking the time. It has just been a real treat to get to know you, to get to know your heart a bit. And I'd love for you to share with our families that are watching what is Master Books? Tell me about Master Books and what's your role as a curriculum developer?
Okay, that's a big question. And I just want to say we have had a lot of fun just talking all things homeschool
Yeah.
off camera. And it's just been it's an honor to be here and get to talk to you and all the homeschool families out there. But I came on early on. Master Books only had a few titles, and I helped them develop their whole homeschool line. And so yeah, it has been a labor of love, and I
Mhm.
have been able to do a lot of it at home while homeschooling my own children. We're
Mhm.
down to just 2. I've graduated
Yeah.
quite a few students in the process of creating all of this wonderful curriculum for Master Books and developing the Master Books method. And
Mhm.
so the Master Books method has just come from a lot of experience, just hands-on in the trenches, working with homeschool families. I started off as our local chapter leader for our homeschool group when we lived in New York, and I led that for many years. But
Mhm.
then my husband Randy and I also started a curriculum company where we sold lots of different Christian curriculum. And so I worked with thousands and thousands of customers, and just took notes in my head of the things that worked, didn't work. And, as I helped guide them in this vast, sea of curriculum choices,
Mhm.
trying to
Mhm.
figure out what was best for them. And then working with my own students, we have 9 children who have all, but how do you get 9 children that are opposite from each other?
I know. I know. I thought the first one's the opposite, the second one, the third one's going to fit in and I'll have it all figured out, and it did not work that way. And
No.
you had more children to be all different than I did. So, um,
Yes. I had one that was advanced and then another that was developmentally delayed. And
mhm.
because one was adopted, they were only 8 months apart, but they were years apart academically. Talk about
Mhm.
challenging. And
Mhm.
so I
Mhm.
learned so much through the years of just, reading through lots of different curriculum, not only for
Mhm.
my own children, but also for our curriculum business. And
Mhm.
so we just kind of took all the best of and infused it into the Master Books method.
Neat. Okay, so let's hear about the Master Books method then. You have schooled me in this today, and I was not familiar with the Master Books method. And I love the way that you explain this. Tell me, what is the Master Books method?
Okay, well, the Master Books method has 3 components: gospel infused, eclectic, and open and go. So let's unpack a little bit what each of those mean. And so, gospel infused, or where faith grows,
Mhm.
means that we don't just slap a scripture verse on a page and that's somehow related and move on.
Mhm.
Instead, we
Mhm.
want to start from the place that God created everything,
Mhm. Mhm.
including everything that we're studying, and to surprise of some, even math.
Yes.
God created the laws, and the reason that math can be counted on is because a God who can be counted on created those things. He created math and we discovered the principles.
I
So how
love that.
neat is that? And so
Mhm.
even math, we can learn something about the character of God. And so there are
Absolutely.
no subjects that are a separate thing. God created everything, and
Mhm. Mhm.
we live in this wonderful world, even though it's marred by sin. God's so good that he still gives us beauty and things to discover and enjoy. And
Mhm.
so we really want to infuse the gospel message and God as creator into every single subject.
Mhm.
Not only that, but the word of God is living. And so we know that when we teach on godly principles and things that are found in scripture, that a student's faith is going to grow. And so we're so confident that we offer a faith grower guarantee. And so that is really the foundation. That's the most important part of what we do at Master Books, is ensuring that when we give a book to a student, that their faith is going to grow.
That's
The
neat.
second part is, it's nearly as important, and that is really honoring the fact that we're fearfully and wonderfully made. We are not this artificial system imposed on us that I see as like a stair step system, where every subject, every student in kindergarten is supposed to be this, then first grade this, then second grade. That's not the way God designed us. God
Exactly.
designed us with a purpose and a plan, down to the fact that our fingerprints are different. In fact, Master Books also has a whole book on fingerprints, which is
Neat.
so
Yeah.
this idea of being eclectic, what that means is we're not afraid to have different solutions. Now, I wrote language lessons for living education. I wrote that series, but I've also helped bring in other solutions for language arts, because there is no one size fits all. Our students are different,
Absolutely.
our
Absolutely.
families are different, and seasons of life are different. And so we really want families to choose the solutions that work best for the student, for the parent teacher, and for the season that they're in. And so that's what we mean by eclectic. And we teach things in a variety of different ways. They come at it from different styles, all sorts of differences, which does make for some extra decision making. I will say that, but there's such a reward in that. And it's
We
also
do have families too that will say, how come I can't just get grade 4 from Master Books the way that I can from this publisher? And I say, because of that, because there's
right.
not just one option for science. There's not just one option for, you have so many resources so that you can choose what works best for this group of kids, this one child, and so on. So I really appreciate that. And jumping back to that gospel infused, I remember reading something by Ruth Beechick years ago where she said, in days gone by, homeschooled materials used to be built this way. Take a public school curriculum, and if it says grade 5 on it, label it grade 4 and pepper some Bible verses on it and call that the homeschool curriculum. And so many curriculum providers have moved so much past that now, and I really appreciate that. And I see that as the heart. Part of this heart of Master Books is that it's not just about peppering some Bible verses on it and slamming some harder content in.
Right. It's really learning about the nature of God.
Yes.
You know, that's what we want to pass on to our children, to learn about the nature of God. And in the process, the gospel message is unpacked and becomes real and relatable to them, and they can understand it. And then hopefully they receive the Lord and go on to spread the gospel as well.
Because if our children learn all of the things and all of the science and they become great inventors or historians or authors or publishers, and yet they have no faith, then where have we gone with this education? As Christian homeschooling families, if you're approaching homeschooling as a Christian parent, then our base and our foundation is not, did they learn to read by the time they were 6? Did they know all of their multiplication tables? Did they pass all the science tests? That's not our far-reaching goal. It's not our vision for where we're going. So very good. So gospel infused, eclectic.
Right. And then open and go. And so through the years, I've had a lot happen in like our local homeschool group. Can you help me set up a schedule? Can you help me with this? I ran into this issue. And so we just learned how to avoid what Randy, my husband, started coining was friction points. We want to smooth out those friction points and really make it, because you're a busy mom of multiple children, homeschooling, and life happens. And we are teaching 4, 5, 6 subjects per child. Well, at
Mm-hmm.
one point I was teaching 5 or 6 kids. They were all
Mm-hmm.
at active school level ages. When you're teaching that many subjects and you've got to, help them all learn, it's a lot to juggle. So if we
Mm-hmm.
can remove those frustration points and just make it easy where a mom can open and go and their student is still going to get a very rich, wonderful education, why wouldn't we do that?
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned along the way with working with so many families what those friction points were. And then as we have published these materials, we listen to our users. We listen to the customer. And where we can and where it makes sense, we update newer
Mm-hmm.
printings to remove any friction points that have
Mm-hmm.
cropped up that we didn't think about.
Yeah,
And
and I'm just going to flip over to one of these books just to
yeah,
show, because this is so important to me as a mom after several years of homeschooling. It just makes my heart sing when, even as a Charlotte Mason mama myself, where we like to skip through the daisies and read all the books, I need a schedule. I
yeah,
need something that's going to help my kids as they get older. Like, this is a ninth grade book. I need something that's going to help them to know what I expect of them on day 5 of week 4.
right.
And to,
Flexible.
right. Yeah. And so we tailor these things, but when I'm using a Masterbooks title, I love that I can just write in, week 1 is ending this date, week 2 is ending that date, and so on. So these schedules, a schedule in the hand of a homeschooling mama is such a blessed thing, because you can use it if you want to. You don't have to. It doesn't
Right.
lead us. It helps us. I really appreciate that.
It gives you a starting point. And
Mm.
I found with helping a lot of parents, they really struggle with setting up that schedule. But
Mhm.
yet we don't want it so firm that they don't have any flexibility. And so we
Mhm.
built in things like, putting a column for a date where you can change up the due date or when you want something done by.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
And they're just tools. Yeah.
flexibility is key.
Very good. Very good. So that's the Masterbooks method. Gospel
Mhm.
infused, eclectic, open and go. Makes my heart sing. Thank you. And tell me, you have said something about your husband being involved in this business. You have other family members that are involved with Masterbooks. Tell me a little bit about your family and homeschool experience. Why did you start homeschooling? What's brought you to this part of this journey, with your family all involved with Masterbooks, or some of them involved with Masterbooks?
Some of them, yeah. Well, years
Mhm.
ago, we started homeschooling our oldest daughter, Carrie Lindquist, who's also the author of Foundations Phonics, published by Master Books, and the Let's Talk Science series.
And I'm looking
Honestly,
forward to chatting with her. Yeah.
yeah, she's actually more talented than I am. She's pretty
Awesome.
amazing with writing. I've written a
Mhm.
lot, and I language lessons is awesome, but my daughter Carrie, she just amazes me. She's something else. But anyway, she's where it all started. Halfway through her first grade year, we just were not happy with some things happening educationally, spiritually, some things like that at the private school she was attending. And really, I should have never even sent her to school. The Lord had been laying homeschooling on our heart. And, sometimes we resist. And the Lord kind of made it clear that we needed to begin homeschooling. So halfway through her first grade year, we made the switch. And yeah,
Mhm.
and really, we haven't looked back. We've had some bumps along the way,
Mhm.
but it's been such an adventure for our family. And
Mhm.
so, like I mentioned, I led our homeschool group. We ended up starting a business. Randy and I ran that for many years, and then the Lord was
Mhm.
calling us to pastor a local church for a time and a season. And we knew that was for a time and a season. So we sold our business, did that. And then while that was happening, he led me into Master Books, and Randy came on into Master Books. And we actually moved from south of Buffalo, New York to Arkansas. And so that's been kind of a wild adventure as well. And
Mhm.
right now, Randy is the president of the company. I have a daughter in marketing. My oldest daughter, like I said, she's a Master Books author. We've had different ones work in the warehouse. Like Joy was responsible for the notes that get sent with scriptures on them.
Yeah,
She's
they
the one
always
who
get tacked up on our board in receiving.
Yep. She just sent me something on that, and she just, it just warms her heart that she had something to do with that legacy,
Yeah.
And so anyway, yeah, here we are. And I spent my time developing the homeschool curriculum line and writing the language lessons for living education series.
Amazing.
And we've continued to homeschool. We've graduated all but 2. And
you and I are going to graduate the same year.
Yes, our babies.
Our babies are going to be done, and then what is on to the grandbabies and the and encouraging the homeschool community as well. So
absolutely, I don't ever see myself retiring.
No, I don't think so. I just love it that just as my last one's going to graduate, our granddaughter is going to be getting towards school age, and grandma's excited about that.
That is a lot of fun. But I have to say, a drawback is they tell you how you should have written the curriculum that they're using when you're an author and they're using your curriculum.
Yes, we do have that with some of our Canadian publications. I do see that probably some of my kids will use them, and there's definitely room for critical improvements.
Critical analysis.
Yes, there we go.
That's always fun from a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. That's so great. So tell me, first of all, we were chatting here just a few minutes ago, and I told you we had a truck arriving. There's new publications coming out. We've been excited about some new things arriving. We got a skid of books from Master Books, New Leaf Master Books. And I knew that those were coming in, and I told our receiver, if you should find it, certainly come and bring it. This is the most hot off the presses book that we have right now.
It is.
I am so excited to see this cute girl with the curly red hair on the front. And that is just arrived here in our store. So excited. And we have parents that are calling and saying, when is this going to be available? Super.
Yes. We've been asked that so much, and it's always so exciting to see. It's like you give birth to this baby, and and you spent so much time with it and labored over it. And, it's just fun to get it out there and then get the feedback. And
and to know that you have plans to make sure that these are available right through to the end of 12th grade.
Yes, level 8 has gone to the printer. So there may be a PDF already available, but the book should be available in the next several weeks, I'm hoping. We never know for sure how long a printer is going to take. We usually say give about 4 weeks. But sometimes we get it in quicker. Sometimes we get it in a couple weeks. Sometimes it takes 6 weeks, but
I know we have pre-orders and that we're ready to hit go as soon as those are ready for you to ship out. This video is going to be available ongoingly. So just for a timestamp, we're having this chat in August 2024. We expect to have those books ready, maybe a little bit late for the start of the school year, but for the 2024-25 school year, we should have everything up to 10th grade available.
Yes. And then 11th grade, the first quarter's written. I heard that there was some design work even going on with it. So we are expecting by the end of 2025 to have it all the way through 12th grade.
Okay. So I can expect then that my students that are going into 10th grade and using this will be able to seamlessly move into 11 and 12 then.
Yes.
As long as, Lord willing, all goes well.
Right.
Very good.
Yeah, it's trucking along.
Yeah. So your role has been as curriculum development overall, but you focused in on these first 6 levels of language lessons for living education, which we have had for a number of years. And now the level 7, 8, 9, 10 are new in the last year or two. And you've had other people helping you to develop that. But tell me about that process of creating these resources, and what parts were your favorite? What parts have you, like, were your baby? Did you love doing the younger years? Do you love overseeing these older years? What
Well,
gives you a
I'd
passion about
say,
language arts?
yeah, I love the younger years. I love the elementary years. They're just so much fun. But
Mhm.
I've also enjoyed working with two different co-authors because I have one co-author for level 7 and 8 and another
Mhm.
one for the high school levels. And what that's allowed us to do is I've been working in tandem with both of them. I
Mhm.
worked with level 7 and level 9 at the same time. And
Wow.
then, yeah, it's been a challenge
And
on
that's
my
why we
end
got
because I'm
9
keeping
before we
up.
got 8.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
working, they're just working on one level. I'm working on two at the same time. But
Right.
it's been a
Right.
blessing because we couldn't have finished the series as quickly as we have without doing
Mhm.
that. But
Yeah.
rather than a certain level that's my favorite day in the whole series is day 1 because
Mhm.
that's when we get to look at picture studies. We get to look at psalms and hymns and scripture and all sorts of fun things. And we just get to absorb it. I don't test them on those days because
Mhm.
that's the day that we're just being creative, that we're just enjoying communication. And
Mhm.
so that's actually my favorite day of
Mhm.
out of the whole series.
Very neat. So, one of the things I have appreciated and often said about language lessons is that cross curricular connections where we get into art studies, where we get into hymns and various other things. Um, I really appreciate that because many moms feel like, oh, I have to check off all these things, but it's a burden to carry those things. And the all in one nature of language lessons for a living education also, it
Yeah.
helps us to be freed up from a spelling curriculum, a grammar curriculum, a writing curriculum, which at various times and stages might be appropriate for families, but the all in one nature is so helpful to some families as well. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's actually this all-in-one format. Master Books has been going more and more to that format as often as possible
Mhm.
because families love it.
Mhm.
That's the feedback that we're getting. And so we do try to do as many of our curriculum in the all-in-one format. It doesn't lend itself to every single curriculum that we publish, but for those that it does, boy, it works out really, really well.
Mhm. And it doesn't lend itself to every child. Some families are like, we just really need to hunker down this year and be spelling kids.
Yes.
And then we don't need to focus on, for kids who are struggling, we don't need to focus on big compositions. We got to get the nuts and bolts. And so free yourself up to say, hey, this is the year that we're going to focus on the spelling and some of the grammar, but not big compositions. However, I do love, and we have in our own family used curriculums where we could use something like an all-in-one curriculum. And then if I said, hey, this kid needs some extra spelling practice, we could add that in without saying, let's toss this all because we need more spelling practice. This is still meeting all of the needs of our kids at their various ages and stages. So
Right, and
it's a
that's
good
one of
group of.
the reasons we separated the days out of what we
Mhm,
focus on, and
mhm.
so that way, if a kid just doesn't need as much grammar practice, you could eliminate some of that day, or
Yeah.
like you said, if you really needed to hone in on that spelling,
Mhm,
you could add to it, and
mhm.
so we wanted it to be really flexible.
Very neat. So we've talked about the age groups that this used to be just available for levels 1 to 6. Now we're moving all the way up, and we're going to graduate and be able to offer these resources for families of various ages. I shared with you, Kristen, too, that I have a friend, a mom, that called me up and said, "Oh, I really wish it was available to level 8 because this young guy in our family, nothing has meshed for him." But language lessons for a living education, and I was able to tell her it's coming, and she said it
It
doesn't
is.
matter, even if it's late, we're going to use it because it works for this young man. And so you've got all the various ages and stages covered now, but would
Mhm.
you say that Master Books keys into a particular curriculum style, classical, unit study, Charlotte Mason? Where would it most resonate, or are we trying to step back from that?
Well, I would say that we do include a lot of the Charlotte Mason flavor, but I wouldn't say it's a purist curriculum. We also focus on a developmental approach. And so we want it to be developmentally appropriate for the
Mhm,
level that we're teaching. And so we also want to include developmental type activities. And so,
mhm,
especially at the lower levels, one of the courses that I just love is the cursive, and that's
mhm,
because I
mhm,
specifically told the author I want developmental activities. The
mhm,
brain is so fascinating when you study it, and
mhm,
so we want the brain coordination. We want those connections to be made because that's what makes good handwriting. And
mhm,
so we try to keep in mind those developmental approaches in our curriculum. And then,
mhm.
of course, it's just the flexibility so that you can tailor it to meet the needs of your student.
Mhm, mhm. We do have families that will call up and say, "Well, I'm not so Charlotte Mason. I'm not sure if I would, gravitate to this or this or this." But we have found that Master Books does fall into more than one category because Charlotte Mason can be a little nebulous for a lot of families. I just have to choose a bunch of books and skip through the daisies and then talk about it. And Master Books doesn't leave us alone with that. It
Right,
doesn't leave you hanging with how do I meet this out in the day to day. I really like the ability to say, day one, week one, here's what you're working on. And,
right.
there's different ways of applying that and meeting us through though that schedule, but it helps to have a schedule to work through.
Yes.
Um, uh, the nuts and bolts of using this, could I create a full curriculum? Like there's other curriculum providers that moms and dads can call us up and send me grade 5. I can't do that with Master Books quite so easily. How could
Well,
I do that?
Master
Um,
Books actually has a basic 4 set.
mhm,
And so
mhm.
you can order that basic 4 and springboard from there.
Yes.
And that's something that you can do.
Mhm.
However, I
However,
yes, I like to sit down with my students and I like to say, okay, this is what the grade 4 set is.
mhm,
These are some of the options and go subject by subject and see if I want to switch out some of the basic 4 for a different option. And
mhm,
so that's a way that you can really customize it, but have
mhm.
a starting place.
Yes, yes. And I do like that because there's never a this is the science you have to do in third grade.
Right.
And there's a lot of ways that we can work with a family to say, hey, you have kids that are a similar age, they could both be doing this science,
Mhm.
or this is much more an interest to you right now. Don't waste your time on stuff that's not fun. Life's too short for boring books.
It sure is. It sure is.
So,
And that's really easy to do, especially in social studies and science. So if you're
mhm,
studying history, if you're studying, any kind of the sciences,
mhm,
it just lends itself real easy, those 2 subjects, to
mhm,
doing them more family style. And Master Books
mhm,
works really well for those who want to do a family style. Now, I will say math and language arts are 2 subjects that you probably want to do with the at the level of your student.
mhm,
It's a
mhm.
little
And
harder
that's
to
You know what? You should come and hang out with us here every day because it's like this is what we're preaching every day. Everybody gets their own math and language arts, and then there's so much that we could do together. Or
Yes,
you can meet the needs of your family in the way that you best see fit. So some families say, I just need a package for each little guy, then we do it. Others will say, we just have to do our science all together, and I couldn't do it any other way. Then you could
right.
do that. It's wonderful. But
I
math and
also
language
agree
arts are those ones where we do have that disciplinary skill that needs to be built. We got to build skill upon skill, um,
Yes,
and we can't just throw everybody into algebra together. And then next week we're going to do adding, and then the following week we're going to make sure we all learn to spell time or to spell or learn to tell time. So we have to be able to build skill upon skill with those disciplinary subjects.
absolutely, absolutely. And we can find ways to overlap in language arts. You can, do a read aloud. You can, do
Mhm.
something like that where you can, share a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And so this is another question about the nuts and bolts then of using language lessons in an everyday setting. That is that we call this an all-in-one curriculum because we don't have to get a separate grammar, don't have to get a separate spelling, we don't have to get a separate handwriting. But there's not a literature component to that. Can you tell me why you have walked that path with this all-in-one curriculum?
Yeah, and that's actually a fallacy. There is a literature
Okay, there we go.
program. It's actually in there. There
Mhm.
are reading prompts. In the
Okay.
back of the book, you're going to find there are some master book titles back there, but I'm also expecting families,
Yeah.
families to find their own, which that's my son, by the way, little rabbit trail.
Look at that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that's my Gabriel. He's the second to youngest. He's 17 right now.
Wow.
Yeah, he graduates. He starts a senior year here this
Very good.
fall.
That
Anyhow,
is amazing. That's amazing. Thank you for doing that. My kids are on the cover of one of our books too.
it's so fun.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
You were talking
But yeah, in the back of the book, you're going to find a chart where you can fill in what they're reading or what you want them to read. I like to sit down with my kids and just talk about the different books that would be great candidates for that year for them to read. And sometimes they'll add in some of their own books that they would like to read. And so we discuss what they're going to be reading. And I like a mixture of real quick and easy reads and others that are more challenging. And so you might want to add in some classic literature. There's all sorts of different ways you could do it. But I want families to choose, number one, the books that they're going to read and the pace that they're going to read them at and the order that they're going to read them. So, you might want to do a short book prior to them jumping into that big, long book. You may find one book can be read in a week, but another might need to be broken out over several weeks. And so really you want to control as the parent what your students are reading. It would frustrate me when a curriculum would tell me, okay, your kid has to read this book. They have to read it at this pace, at this grade level. And that's it. That's just the way it is. Because kids are fearfully and wonderfully made. God has created them uniquely with a purpose and a plan. And they're not cookie cutter. And families are not cookie cutter. There may be a family that loves the historical novels, and there's no time, like you mentioned, no space for that in the curriculum. And so you're missing out on that. Or for the Canadian customers, like we discussed, so much of it is American based, and there's no room for that in curriculum. Where I want to leave room. I want that flexibility so that they're met where they are. You may want to sprinkle in, you may have a kid that just loves cats. And anything, whether it's a made up story, whether it's a technical, something about cats, you may want to sprinkle those in. I have a kid that loves theology. And so
I got one of those too.
That's a challenge, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And so you may
the questions that come up at the dinner table.
Crazy. You're just kind of like, well, let me think about that a bit before I answer.
That's right. I think I was talking with some ladies last night at our church, and they said, what's a question your kids have asked that you didn't know the answer? And I was like, every single day, like, where do we start? They ask these big questions, and we want to let them dive into the books that are appropriate for their passions, for their reading level, for their abilities. Absolutely. And for our family's passions, the things that we want to discuss at the dinner table. For sure.
Yeah. And so people think that there's no literature component with language lessons, but there actually is.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
It was done by design on purpose. And so it's just that we want the families to.
I really do appreciate that, because it does leave room. And we often are, for our Canadian families, we're often recommending something like language lessons to go with a Canadian history course at the high school level, because there's so many good opportunities for literature-based reading that will deepen our understanding of Canadian history and social studies. And we freed up the time to insert that literature as our literature component of our English language arts course. And we can dive deeply into both of these well.
I love that you get it. I do.
We're preaching to the choir.
Yeah. Because everything that you're saying is yes. That's
Yeah.
why I did it. It's not true that there's no literature component. I put in the reading reminders, and hey, make sure you're marking off as you're reading.
Good.
And but it's parent directed. Of course that gets less and less as the students get older, but still, and it's so gratifying to take that list in the back of the book at the end of the year and see how many books they've read. That's a sense of accomplishment. So not only do you get to have the plan at the start, but at the end you get to have this sense of accomplishment.
Yeah. So neat. So neat. I love it. This you're singing my song. Thank you for doing that. We've chatted for quite a while now. I love it that our families can sit through this chat with you and hear your heart and hear the bigger picture of the Master Books method, of where Master Books is going, the resources that are available, and we can focus in on these particular titles. I think we've kind of got this, but what's the bottom, the base, the foundation of what you hope students and families are going to get out of this curriculum?
My hope is that not only will their faith grow, which really bottom line, we're talking salvation, for our students. That's bottom line. But they need to be able to read in order to understand, or they need to be able to hear. And so we focus on all sorts of communication, whether it's written, whether you're reading it, whether you're hearing it, or whether you're speaking it. But there's also those listening skills, which really help the person develop empathy. So we want students to also develop empathy. And so there's, as you go through the years, there's lessons that focus in on that. And so that they can pay attention to what the other person is saying, not just what they want to say. And so I want them, through learning all of these skills, to not only receive the gospel message, but then to go out and share the gospel message to their generation. And that is what my heart is. I want them to fall in love with the Lord. I want them to, just have a dynamic relationship with God, and then be able to have the tools to communicate that to others as well.
So neat. So neat. Very much about developing the character of our children, as well as their building their faith and their character. Very neat.
Yes.
Any last tips for us? As a mama who's been there in the trenches for a lot of years, as a curriculum developer, what would be a last tip or two that you have for leading kids to love reading and writing and literature, and to deepen their faith?
Well, I think that everything has to begin with prayer. And when we get into a place that is a frustration, a friction point, a struggle, no matter if it's academic or spiritual, the first thing that we need to do is to go to the Lord in prayer. And, he says he will give us wisdom if we ask. And so we thank him we can look back at all the things that the Lord has done through the years. I love looking at those milestones. I recommend that moms write these things down so that when they hit those moments, they can actually physically look back and see all that the Lord has done. I have to do that in my life, not just with homeschooling, but all in life. You come up with these challenges. I lost my mom this year, so it really rattled me. And I have to look back and say, you know what? The Lord has never left me. He's always been with me at this point in life, at this point, and this is a new challenge for me, but he is with me. And so I really encourage parents to really remember all the ways that the Lord directed their steps, that things worked out because he was in control, and how he comforts us. He does so much for us. When we look at the past, it gives us the faith and the courage to continue forward. And he will meet you in those places. And so that would be my second encouragement, is just really look back at all that the Lord has done and then trust him moving forward. And another this might seem a little bit anti of what we're saying here, but if your student doesn't become this avid reader, it's okay. They're not all going to end up loving reading, because I'm always pointing back. We're fearfully and wonderfully made. And God has a purpose and a plan for each of us. I know some dynamic Christians that don't love to pick up a novel and read it. And that's okay. They're very educated. They read the word. They love the Lord, but reading isn't their thing. So it's not the end of the world if we don't have a whole family full of just, oh, give me that book. They can be very successful and not have this love for reading. And we have kids that struggle with reading. And that doesn't mean that they can't communicate. Language is much fuller than just having a love for picking up a book and reading. And so look at communication in a broader way and love the child you have, that the Lord has designed and given strengths and weaknesses and abilities. We're not all the same. And so try to understand where your student is coming from and how God designed them to be. We can always work on the things that are a little harder, but we can also appreciate the things that they're good at. And so those are some little things that I've learned along the way to really just give us all grace in getting through the process, because it's not all easy.
All grace that we have our plans, and then the Lord sets in motion what he's going to do. And we as homeschooling mamas tend to be these type A moms. We've got a plan, and the Lord needs to come alongside this.
Yes.
That's not the way it's meant to be. So pouring oodles and oodles of grace on relationship, on the path that we thought it was supposed to take and the way that it's actually working out, because God has a bigger plan. And it's not about whether our kids go to university or college. It's not about whether they get the right job or they are successful financially. It's not about any of that. Those are all byproducts that may or may not be a part of successful education. And for a Christian family, a successful education is putting our children in touch with God. So thank you so much for what you have invested in making home education a God-centered reality for so many families.
It's truly been an honor. And we love our Canadian customers. I've been able to touch base with so many of our Canadian customers through the Moms of Master Books and the app. And, you know, we truly do love our Canadian customers.
Very neat. Well, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll chat again.
Sounds good. Thank you.